Thank you everybody for coming this morning, and thank you, Louis, for introduction and organizing of this event. I remember, as Louis have mentioned, I will be talking about the anatomy of modern international armed conflicts, and more specifically about the conflict in Ukraine. And I remember around 3 years ago, when I was starting my course of public international law back in Ukraine, my professor started this topic by telling that the war is the natural state of humankind, because in the billions of years of the history of humankind, there were not more than 300 years without war. But as a person from Ukraine, as a person from the state which is now for more than 3 years in the state of war, I should say to you that it can't be the natural state of humankind, or at least it's contrary to my own nature. So I will start about some brief theoretical introduction about the international humanitarian law and just the international law regulation of armed conflicts, just for us to be on the same page and understand what we're talking about. And then I will be talking more specifically about Ukrainian conflict. So let's start with the definition of aggression. Now you will be a little bit shocked because there will be like lots of symbols here. But in essence, an aggression is the use of armed force by a state against the sovereignty, territorial integrity, or political independence of another state. And here are some of the acts can be, regardless of declaration of war, considered as the act of aggression. And you may see that there are lots of them, but the interesting point here that each and every of these things were in the conflict in Ukraine. I remember this weird thing about like use of armed forces of one state which are within the territory of another state with the agreement of receiving state in contravention to the conditions of this agreement. And this is actually what has happened in Ukraine. Russian Navy had the conditions in the contract with Ukraine that they are staying in the territory of Ukraine. In the city of Sevastopol, but then they breached that contract and used that to annex that territory. So as you can see here are such acts as like invasion, attack, bombardment, and also the last one is, for example, sending on behalf of the state of armed bands and groups. So everything which you can see here was in the history of 3 past years in Ukraine. Also, such a theoretical point in international humanitarian law, the armed conflicts are divided into international and non-international, and it may seem obvious that the main distinction is that in international conflict there are 2 states who are party to that conflict, while in non-international armed conflict we are talking about a state and non-state entity. However, the recent practice showed that it's not so easy to make that distinction. And maybe you may think, why should we need to make that distinction? But there are 3 very significant things in which this distinction will be really very, very important. So only in international armed conflicts we have such things as the status of combatant, and combatant is actually a person who is the part of armed forces of the state, and this person is actually has the right to kill his enemy. So he will not be then prosecuted for the murder or something like that, as he has this official status of combatant, and that is actually his role in this armed conflict, to kill his enemies. Also, only in international armed conflicts, these combatants, in case of capturing, can become the prisoners of war. And it may also seem odd, but actually prisoners of war have really very extensive list of rights. For example, they should be treated humanly, they are allowed to communicate with their relatives and receive packages, they should be able to inform the International Committee of Red Cross about their capturing, and also they should be paid for their work, given adequate food, and so on and so on. And also only in international armed conflicts we can talk about such a notion as a legitimate military target, which means that even civilian objects can be bombed or attacked if the benefit from that attack is higher than the damage to civilian objects. But when we're talking about non-international armed conflicts, we have nothing like that. And for example, a person who is taking part as the soldier of a regular army of the state and who is fighting against terrorists or non-state entity. He is not a combatant. He is kind of a person who commits murder or something like that and should be prosecuted not according to the laws of war, but according to just criminal codes, provisions, and something like that. As I have mentioned, sometimes it's kind of difficult to make the distinction between international and non-international armed conflicts. And in 1999, there was a so-called Tadic case. It was the case of International Tribunal for former Yugoslavia, and they formed so-called overall control test when they are talking that even in a conflict which seems to be non-international, when there is a non-state entity, if the state exercises overall control over those groups, this conflict then will be treated as an international one. So the overall control test should include everything that you can see here: financing, training, equipping, organizing and coordinating of military actions. And I will try to prove that everything which you have seen in this overall control test is present in Ukrainian conflict, and Russian Federation gives everything of that to non-international actors. So now let's move to the situation in Ukraine, and I want to mention that I will be primarily focusing on the eastern part of Ukraine because I think that the conflict, the annexation of Crimea, is kind of recognized by all the international community as the crime against humanity, I will be classifying the war in eastern Ukraine as an international armed conflict. And I was talking to lots of professors back in Ukraine about their views on classification, and some of them are viewing the situation in Crimea and situation in eastern Ukraine as one conflict. So I will briefly talk to you about some main events which were in Crimean Peninsula. So that is the map of Ukraine, the way I and I hope my future children and grandchildren will see it. So this is a unitary state which consists of 24 regions and the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. The Autonomous Republic of Crimea became the part of Ukrainian Soviet Republic in 1954. And after the declaration of independence of Ukraine in 1991, Ukraine was recognized in the state in these borders, and even Russian Federation has no protests about these borders of the country. Till 2014, surprisingly, in the end of February, these so-called green persons appeared on peninsula. They were without any insignia, so it was impossible to understand whom are they. But then in future, Russian Federation told that these were the members of their regularly armed forces. They were not alone, that they were with lots of military armory and gadgets. So they blocked the ports, they blocked the kind of line which separated peninsula from the main continent. There were attacks on governmental buildings which were in Crimean Peninsula. After that, just in a little bit more than 2 weeks, there was a so-called referendum for people of Crimean Peninsula to join the Russian Federation, and then the result of this referendum, which was like 96.7% for joining Russian Federation. So there was an unlawful inclusion of Crimea into Russian Federation, so the crime was committed. But they haven't stopped on that, and they moved further to the eastern part of Ukraine, and even those professors who do not view the conflict in Crimea and eastern Ukraine as one conflict, they also believe that the conflict in the eastern Ukraine is also an international one because of that overall control test. So as for the eastern, how about eastern Ukraine? The situation there was pretty similar. So this is the line, kind of frontier line now. It used to be further, so it used to be further closer to controlled territories. So this is uncontrolled border of Ukraine, and this is uncontrolled territory. So this is the occupied territory by non-state entities and also by Russian Federation. And this is actually the controlled territory of Ukraine. You can see there on the map that this is kind of rather small part of Ukraine, but still very significant. So the situation was completely the same. Like there were attacks on governmental buildings, there were protests against the territorial sovereignty of the state. Then there was also 2 unlawful referendums in Donetsk and Lugansk, and also the results were the same, but the results of that referendum were not about joining the Russian Federation, but for their independence as like 2 states. But these two states are not recognized by any other state, including Russian Federation. I now will give you some evidences why I believe that this conflict is an international one rather than non-international. And the first evidence will be the presence of soldiers of Russian army who were captured, who were prosecuted under Ukrainian law, and these are like the most famous of them, Yerofeev and Alexandrov. They are really like Russian soldiers with their documents on the territory of Ukraine, and they are not the only one. There are thousands of them who are captured by the Ukrainian state and persecuted. The second evidence of the internationality of this conflict is so-called Russian humanitarian convoys. So you can see lots of cars with some unknown inside of them. So starting from 2014, Russian Federation sends these cars to the territory of Ukraine through the uncontrolled border, and no one, only Russian Federation, can see what is inside. Neither Ukrainian side nor International Committee of Red Cross. But the interesting point here is that after these convoys are entering the uncontrolled territory, the war intensifies in times. So, like, you can make your own conclusions. Another evidence of the international conflict in Ukraine is MH17 tragedies. So, I hope that all of you know about this tragedy, which was on July 17, 2014. The airplane from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur was shot down from the uncontrolled territory of Ukraine. And according to the joint investigation group, which is formed by Amsterdam, Malaysia, and Ukraine, and like lots of countries, it was done from military gadget, which can only be produced in Russia, and this military gadget was moved from the Russian territory just the day before this tragedy, and then moved back the day after this tragedy. So, but the result of this tragedy is that 298 people were killed. The other side of international armed conflict is here you can see like top 10 military gadgets which are used in the conflict, and these gadgets are produced, sold, and are only can only be found in Russian Federation, so you can't get them from any other country of the world. Yeah.
Just to add something, the Russian representative in ICJ recently said that people of Donetsk and Lugansk found them in mines.
Yeah.
In coal mines, which are heavily present around that region.
Yeah, so that is their justification how it was like. So, Other evidences of international armed conflict is, for example, 1.7 of internally displaced people in Ukraine. So those people who seem to vote for their independence, they are internally displaced, so they went to other regions of Ukraine, the state from which they wanted to be separated, and now they are settling there, they are receiving social support from the state, so something like that. Other collateral evidence of international aggression is, first of all, the usage of Russian currency in the occupied territories. They are not using Ukrainian currency or dollars or something like that. They are using Russian ruble. So that means that they are getting this money from somewhere. And other collateral evidence is the EU, USA, and other countries' sanctions against Russian Federation and Russian officials. This conflict is tried to be solved diplomatically, but it's kind of difficult. The diplomatic way of solving this conflict is known as Minsk Agreement, and those people who heard about that, they thought that it is going on in Normandic format, and like the heads of four states are kind of negotiating this diplomatic solution. However, it's not the truth. The Minsk Agreement, Minsk Protocol, and Minsk negotiations are carried out by these guys. And the Minsk Protocol is also signed by these guys. Who are them? So that is the former president of Ukraine, who is representative of Ukraine. This is Russian's ambassador to Ukraine. This woman in the middle is the representative of Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, and those people are in the agreement are like Plotnitsky and Zakharchenko. So only their surnames, like they were coming through, and they signed that agreement. I don't know why. So they are kind of representatives of those rebels. So the agreement itself is signed by these people, so it's very difficult to enforce the agreement. Also, the points which are inside are kind of very important. The first one is the bilateral ceasefire, then the permanent monitoring by OSCE of the conflict, the permanent monitoring of the border of Ukraine, local elections, and so on and so on. This is the problem with diplomatic solutions. So in Ukraine, it's now the hybrid war, and when I'm talking about hybrid war, I'm not only talking about like the difficulty to kind of classify it as an international conflict or non-international armed conflict, but first of all, because in this hybrid war, we are facing not only massive destruction of infrastructure. For example, this was one of the most modern airports in Donetsk. We are facing not only these, and also lots of social crises there. So this is what a normal war, how the normal war is looking. But we are also facing some hybrid elements. The first one of which is economic war, and the second is information war. When I'm talking about economic war, you should know that these regions of Ukraine were highly industrial. There were mines there, coal washing plants, and Ukraine used to be an exporter of coal, but now we are forced to import that. Also, we were dependent on Russian gas, but now since 2014 we're not importing it from Russia, and we're importing it from other countries, but the price is kind of very high compared to the Russian price before. The other sign of hybrid war is an information war. So there were lots of cyber attacks by Russian Federation on Ukrainian governmental websites, and also there are lots of propaganda on the internet and just people talking around, and they're like giving lots of not truthful information. So, for example, the solution for one of the solutions to information war is the website stopfake.org. So this is non-profit Ukrainian website where you can see each day just like publications of Russian Federation and then just the sign of fake of them, on them with the justification of why they are a fake. I also want to mention that these conflicts show lots of weaknesses of modern international organizations and how they can't combat the oppression. So let's start with the weaknesses of the United Nations. It was formed after the World War II, and the permanent members of the Security Council, the most powerful body of the United Nations, they are the winners of World War II, but the world changed a lot, and Russian Federation, as the successor of the Soviet Union and the permanent member of the Security Council, and they're blocking all the decisions concerning Ukraine in the Security Council. So of course this should be revolutionized, I think, the structure of the United Nations and in particular Security Council. But the good sign for Ukraine here is that as a permanent member for the next years and as the head of the Security Council for the next year, Ukraine is responsible for forming at least the agenda of Security Council meetings. So I think that the questions of Ukraine will be raised quite frequently. Also, the weaknesses of the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, they are monitoring, so they are having the passive role in the conflict, so they are only monitoring the situation, and each day they are publishing their reports about the violations of ceasefire from both sides. But their weakness is that because of their problems with security, they admit that they are kind of afraid of their security. They are working only in the daytime and they are not working during the night. So guess what? We have lots of ceasefire violations during the night. So during the day everything is okay, but then during the night when OC is not there, there are attacks from the uncontrolled side. Also, I would like to mention that in 2014, Ukraine filed a complaint to the International Criminal Court, and in 2014, last year, 2016, there was a preliminary examination by the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, and in that report, it was told that these two conflicts in Crimea and Eastern Ukraine are separated. The conflict in Crimea is only international one, while in Eastern Ukraine there are two parallel conflicts which are going at the same time. One is non-international, the other one is international. And international started from the date of MH17 tragedy. So when I was planning this presentation, I tried to make it as non-emotional and full of legal provisions as possible, so I left for myself the last slide, 5 days, January 29 to February 5th, like just a month ago, there was an intensification of fire near the city of Avdiivka, and these people were killed, 60 Ukrainian soldiers were wounded, and about 17,000 of civil people were for more than a week without water, electricity or gas. And the worst thing for me here is that out of these 9 people, only 2 of them were like professional soldiers before the beginning of this war. Others were, they joined the army, Ukrainian army, after the full combat alert by the decree of president. So only 3 years ago, their mothers, fathers, wives, their children had no idea that their men will be killed in a war. So thank you very much for your attention.
So now I invite Nadine to start his presentation, and we'll do Q&A for both of them after, okay?